Hare Krishna, good morning dear devotees from Sridham Mayapur. My name is Madhavananda Das, and this is our adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. We have a very special discussion today. Continue speaking about our topic of meeting in Kurukshetra. We're on part 13 of that, and today we're on part 7 of what happened in Mathura. And some very amazing things. Why Krishna didn't return to Vrindavan, and why Nanda Maharaj left him there and returned alone, and what happened when Nanda Maharaj returned to Vrindavan. So we'll begin with a few prayers. Gora Graganya Gana Gocha Goloruharam Goranga Guratama Gopyada Kolpa Briksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshi Kavaram Satatam Namami Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Shravanarotamam Devyam Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayat Vedi Ramayanesh Chaiva Purane Bhadate Tata Adavante Chamadye Chahari Sarvatra Giyate Mukam Karodi Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shigurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Paramananda He Madhava Padunga Luchi Makaranda Se Makaranda Panakori Anande Bolo Hari Hari Harinka Name Vandavela Padikori Be Chakadola Se Chakadolanka Padaye Manamo Rahu Nirantare Manamo Nirantare Rahu Ha Krishna Boli Jiva Jao Ha Krishna Boli Jao Jiva Mote Udada Radha Dava Mote Udada Radha Dava Mote Udada Radha Dava Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, I want to thank all the dear devotees for joining us this morning. Again, we're on our discussion, part 13 of Krishna's meeting with the residents of Vrindavan and Kurukshetra, and we're laying the foundation. We spoke about how Krishna left Vrindavan, and now we're on our 7th part of what happened in Mathura. And we heard about Kamsa Vada, the killing of Kamsa. We heard about Kamsa, Yoshitam Vilap, or the lamentation of Kamsa's wives after he was killed. We heard something about Krishna's kindness to them and how he arranged for Kamsa's funeral. And he instructed that all the Brijbasis who were there with him in Mathura should also go. And we heard something from the Hari Vamsa Purana about the Ugrasena Abhishek, or how Krishna gave the throne to Ugrasena, and how Ugrasena said, no, you should take it. But how Krishna was not interested in that, and how Krishna told him, he said, no, I killed this personality, he's my uncle. Now I'm going to retire to the forest to do penance. Meaning, I'm going to return to Vrindavan. In our last section, we heard something about the meeting of Krishna with Vasudeva and Devaki for the first time since his appearance, and how Vasudeva and Devaki, when Krishna came before them, they were afraid. And Vasudeva was saying, you're not actually really our son, you're Bhagavan, you're God. And Krishna was like, oh, come on, give me a break. So then he covered him over with his Yogamaya potency. And then he was able to sit on their lap. And we heard something from Sanatana Goswami in Brihad Vaishnav Toshini, where he quoted Bhagavad Gita 15:18, where Krishna speaks about his amazing power and how he's beyond the fallible and the infallible, how he's Ksharam, Yasmat Ksharam Atito Hum, how he's transcendental. And Sanatana Goswami explains that we've heard a lot about God and how powerful he is, but now we really know how powerful Krishna is because he was able to send Nanda Maharaj back to Braj. That's very impressive. And we heard something about, in that meeting with Vasudev Devaki, how they got pure love due to association with Nanda Maharaj when they saw that love. And we spoke something about the importance of Sadhu Sangha. And so today, I'd like to begin with a description from Jiva Goswami's Gopal Campu. These are not actually classes that we're doing. This is more of a reading. And we've collected so many different things from all the different places we can find, from Gopal Campu, from Hari Vamsa Purana, from Srimad Bhagavatam, and 3 or 4 different commentaries on the Bhagavatam, and Jiva Goswami's Gopal Campu, and maybe today we'll hear something from Chandidas. If not today, then our next session. So Jiva Goswami in Gopal Campu says that Krishna then went out with Vasudeva. And at that time, being affectionate to his servants, Krishna remembered Uddhava, who, Jiva Goswami says, with unblinking eyes, had such a strong desire to see Krishna. So Krishna then sent some people to bring him. Uddhava, Jiva Goswami said, was watching from some distance with unblinking eyes. He was standing at a distance because of his humility. Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati Thakur has described very beautifully in his Vrindavan Mahimamrita, the 2nd chapter, text 14. Brata bhoga subhaktaka ihana bhavatanapi sangsara madhye vidya dana dvara jaikati kati jagati kyati pujatya labdaha ajahre piyadrichika urugunavan apyaho samvritatma Srimad Brindavanismin satatamata sake sarvato mukta sangha. Prabodhananda Saraswati is a madman. And he says, Bratar, my dear brother, you'll find many times in Vedic culture when someone starts to say something really heavy, you put your arm around the person and say, my dear brother, before you begin to speak. So Prabodhananda Saraswati says, Brata bhoga subukta ka iha. How many types of bhoga subha, this enjoyment, have you not already had in this samsara madhya, in this world of birth and death? Vidya dhana dvarajai kati kati jagati kyati pujabhya labdaha. You've had so much puja and pratishta, some worship from people, you've been so famous, you've gotten vidya, knowledge, you've gotten dana, you've gotten charity, you've done sacrifices, you've done so many things. My dear brother, just today, ajahare, pi yadrichika, just don't work for anything. Just stay behind. Do your nam bhajan. And yadrichika means you just accept whatever food comes unsought. Uru gunavan. And just look to see good qualities in other people's. Aho samvitatma. Don't see their bad qualities, their faults. Don't push yourself forward. Rather, Srimad Brindavanismin satatam atta saki sarvato mukta sangha. Rather, you should remain alone, obscure, and unknown, and just satatamata, just wander about, atasake sarvata, with no companion in this beautiful forest of Vrindavan. So this is the mood of a devotee. This is the mood of Uddhava. He didn't push himself forward and say, don't you know who I am? Look at me. I look like Krishna. I'm so important. The Manava Dharma Shastra, 262 to 163, describes Samanad Brahmano Nityam Udijet Vishad Eva Amritashyeva Chakham Shed Avamanasya Sarvada Sukyam Hyavamata Sete Sukam Cha Pratibudhyate Sukam Charati Lokesmin Avamanta Vinashyati. Samanad Brahmano Nityam. Throughout his life, a Brahman should consider that this material prestige is bish, it's poison. And he should consider Amritasheva Chakkang Shed. When people criticize him, that's like nectar. Very, very good thing. He says, because after all, if someone learns to tolerate this dishonor, then sukham hyavamatasit, you'll be able to sleep happily. Sukham chaprati buddhite, you'll be happy when you're awake. You'll be happy, sukham charati lokesmin, when you're moving about. And the person who criticizes him will become embarrassed, and their happiness, avamanda vinashiti, in this life and in the next will be vanquished. Prabhupada says a similar thing in Nectar Devotion. Anyone who has any desire or aspiration for satisfying his senses by becoming more and more important, either in the material sense or in the spiritual sense. I'm telling people, don't you know, I am a disciple of Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj, and I am in charge. I'm like Brinda Devi. I make the gardens, and I'm doing this service. I'm distributing books. I'm an important person. Such a person, Prabhupada says, cannot actually relish the really sweet taste of devotional service. That's from the 3rd chapter of Nectar Devotion. So Uddhava was watching from a distance. He wasn't eager to push himself forward, just as in some of our classes maybe a month or so ago, we were speaking about the Keshi demon, and how Keshi, when he entered Vrindavan, he was making a big noise. Yeah? That's all Keshi had going for him, was his loud mouth. And he came into Braj advertising himself, according to Thakur Bhaktivinoda and Chaitanya Siksamrita. He says there that Keshi means Ami Bodho Bhakta Avacharya Abhiman. He had this attitude, I'm a great devotee, I'm very important. And Jiva Goswami and Gopal Campu says that when Keshi entered Vrindavan, all the residents of Vrindavan became horrified. They went running away. And according to Garga Samhita, Keshi was a devotee in his previous life. But he'd made some mistake, it's a long story. But the residents of Vrindavan, they were disturbed by him, even though he was ultimately a devotee previously. Why were they disturbed? Because this guy's going to spoil everything. He's coming in and just making a big noise. And that's not the nature of Vaishnavas. As Srila Prabhupada says in Nectar Devotion, anyone who has any desire to become more and more important, either in the spiritual or material sense, they can't really relish the sweetness of bhakti. So Uddhava is such a dear devotee. He's an eternal associate of the Lord. And Jiva Goswami here in Gopal Campu is describing the so-called first meeting of Uddhava and Krishna. Don't think it's actually their first meeting. But in one sense it is. Just like the Rupa Goswami speaks about Purva Rag and how Radha and Krishna haven't yet met. There's no question Radha and Krishna are together eternally. But for the sake of some pastime, it happens. So Jiva Goswami in Gopal Campu speaks about the first meeting of Uddhava and Krishna. And he describes, Anyonyam milati sma yarhabinavam tarhi swayam navidat koham kutra kada kaita iti saprayan sacha Sri Prabhu Kim chadura gatas chatana vividur yat tatra siddhantitam Ko gachin nija tattvam etad anayo prema padam vettihi. When that milan, that meeting, happened for the first time between Uddhava and Krishna, they lost all awareness of themselves. They were thinking, Ko ham kutra, who am I? Kadaka, where am I? When did this, who are these people? Their meeting was so sweet, just like a boy when he's with a girl and he's desperately in love with that girl. He forgets the time. He's not looking at his watch. He's not looking at the calendar. And we hear in the Bhagavatam, sometimes some kings, they're dallying so much with a beautiful lady that so much time goes by, many days, weeks, even months or years. And they forget about everything in this so-called love. But this is divine love. This is the love of Uddhava and Krishna. And when they first met, they were so ecstatic. The people nearby, they couldn't understand. Kim chadaragatascha tan navi vidur yat siddhantitam. Who could understand what was going on? Why they'd lost their consciousness? Ko gachan nija tattvam. Who could understand this tattva? And Jiva Goswami says, Etad anayo prema param vitihi. Only their prema understood their feelings. Then Krishna and Balaram at that time, they went a little ways away from Vasudev and they met with Uddhava. Again, because this is the nature of intimate relationships. This is what we need. Don't think that bhakti just means that I belong to an institution or even that I belong to the Seva Sangha of my Gurudev. That Seva Sangha is very important. And I don't like to see the institution of Srila Prabhupada as an institution. I see it as a Seva Sangha. But that's not my only identity. I am ISKCON, or I am Gaudiya Math, I am a Babaji, I am this or that. That's not my only identity. I have friends, and I want to love them. And when I meet with those friends, I remember once I was in the Vrindavan temple, class had just finished, and a devotee came to me and said, oh, Sachinanda Maharaj is requesting if you could come and see him. So I went to see him, and Maharaj said, so will you have lunch with me today, Madhav Nanda? And then he told me a very beautiful thing which really touched my heart. He said, if you want to cultivate friendship with someone, you have to spend intimate time with them. And so this is what Krishna and Balaram are illustrating in their behavior. When we read and when we hear about the behavior of Krishna and Balaram and their associates, we should look deeply in it and see what lessons we can take from it. So here, Krishna and Balaram were with Vasudev, and they kind of said, Vasudev, if you don't mind just for a second, and they went a little ways away, and they met with Uddhava in a private way, so they could really speak their hearts there. And Jiva Goswami and Gopal Campu says that Krishna, in great ecstasy, he embraced Uddhava and was looking at his face constantly, and he was soaking Uddhava with a cool stream of tears, which made a pond of water. And Jiva Goswami says that pond of water arose from his heart, which is full of separation. Now, if you're a little thoughtful, you may ask a question. He's meeting Uddhava, he's embracing him, he's looking right at his face. What does it mean that Krishna's heart is full of separation? His heart is not full of separation from Uddhava. He's meeting Uddhava, he's in ecstasy. But Krishna's heart is full of separation from the Brijbasis. And why is it being mentioned here? Because Krishna has already marked Uddhava. You're going to be my messenger. You're going to take this message to Nanda and Yashoda and to the residents of Vrindavan, and especially to the Braj Gopikas. And so when he sees Uddhava, these feelings of separation are rising in the heart of Krishna, because Uddhava is marked for this special service. Uddhava is such a dear devotee. In the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, Krishna tells Uddhava, Natata me priyatama Atma yonya nishankara nacha sankarshano nashya naivatmacha yata bhavan. He says, my dear Uddhava, natata me priyatama. No one is priyatama, as dear to me as you are. Not atmayoni. Atmayoni means Brahma, who's born from my own body. He came from my own body. He's not as dear to me. Nasha Shankara, nor Lord Shiva Shankar, Nacha Shankar Shano, not even Lord Balaram, who's my direct expansion. Nashri, not even the goddess of fortune. Naivatmachaya Bhavan, as dear as you are. In Krama Sandarbha, his commentary in this verse, Jiva Goswami has explained that here Krishna is using Uddhava as an example to show the excellence of bhakti and how Brahma has this abhiman. Sridhar Swami says a similar thing in his commentary. They have this identity. I am Krishna's son. And Lord Shiva is thinking, I am the assistant, the servant of Krishna. And Sankarshan is thinking, I am Krishna's brother. And Lord Shri is thinking, I'm very beautiful, and I'm the Lord's wife. And Atma here, Jiva Goswami says, it refers to the Lord's form of a deity. Even my deity form, which is non-different from me, it's not so pleasing to me. And all these persons, Jiva Goswami says, are actually pleasing because of their bhakti. But he says to Uddhava, they're not as dear to me as you, because you have greater bhakti. And Jiva Goswami says that this verse shows his great affection for his devotee. And Jiva Goswami also, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary, he says that this verse indirectly is speaking about Nanda and Yashoda. And Nanda and Yashoda are not mentioned here because their bhakti conception is much greater than their identity as parents. In other words, their love for Krishna is so great, it overcomes even their attitude that I'm Krishna's mother or father, although that's their identity and that's their connection with Krishna. But even sometimes that gets lost, and they're just looking at the beautiful face of Krishna and feeling so much love for Krishna. And we've been hearing in our last session, how Nanda Maharaj, he took Krishna to Vasudev and Devaki. So his conception of being a parent wasn't as great as his love for Krishna, as the devotee, as his bhakti for Krishna. And therefore, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says, they're the dearest. And he quotes the Bhagavatam 10th canto, chapter 11, Darshayams tadvidam loka atmano bhakta vasyatam. That the Lord, he displays this quality of coming under the control of his devotees. And Vishwanath says another meaning of this verse, Natata me priyatama, where Krishna is speaking about how dear Uddhava is. He says that amongst all these devotees, you're the dearest, and you should hear this from my mouth. So amongst all the devotees, Vishwanath says Uddhava is the best, but the gopis are the best of all. And this is indicated indirectly in this verse, because the same Uddhava prayed for the dust from the feet of the Braj Gopikas. And Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says, this is the conclusion of the Vaishnavas. So at that time, Jiva Goswami and Gopal Campu, he says that Vasudev, then he got on a huge chariot. And on that chariot, he took Krishna, Balaram, and Uddhava. I find that very interesting that he brought Uddhava. They're going to meet Nanda Maharaj. And they went to that camp of Nanda Maharaj, which is on the outskirts of Mathura. They didn't really enter into Mathura. They went there for the wrestling arena, and they saw Chanura Mustika killed, and they were there for so many things, but they weren't staying there. This is not our conception, Mathura. We're staying a little on the outside. And Jiva Goswami says that that encampment where all the carts was impenetrable. So he's going, Vasudev's taking Krishna and Balaram to meet Nanda. And again, this is the nature of a devotee. They want to bring Krishna to someone else. And Vasudev's also not envious. But what I find interesting in this description is that he brings Uddhava. And this is the nature of a devotee. If a devotee invites someone, Prabhuji, Mataji, would you please come to our house for prasadam? You should also invite their intimate friend if someone is staying with them. If you invite someone, you speak to your friend and they have another friend standing next to them, it's not proper. My mother would beat me for something like that. If you're going to invite that person, you also have to invite their friend. So Vasudev, seeing the loving exchange that Krishna had with Uddhava, he's also invited Uddhava, you come as well. And so when Vasudeva and Nanda Maharaj met, they had a deep embrace. And then there was some talks. And Vasudeva spoke with Nanda Maharaj's younger brother Sananda, Nandana. And they talked about the spying and disturbances caused by Kamsa, who is now dead. And Vasudeva then requested to Nanda Maharaj, as long as you stay here, you and all the cowherds who are here, you should all come every day to my house and eat. You should treat my house as if it were your house. Again, the same quality is there. Vasudeva didn't say, oh Nanda, you come by yourself. It's too difficult for us to cook for all the cowherd boys and everybody. You just come by yourself. But he invited everyone to come with him. But when he invited them, he was also having an intimate exchange with Nanda Maharaj. So both things are there. And Jiva Goswami describes that for several days, every day there was a great festival at the house of Vasudeva, and Nanda Maharaj and the cowherd boys were going there, and he's making, who knows, maybe pizzas sometimes and pasta, I don't know. So many feasts and things they were making for Krishna and Balaram. I think more likely they were cooking what Mother Yashoda cooks for Krishna. And during that time, Krishna and Balaram, they also attended the assemblies of Ugrasena and Vasudeva, because they were establishing a kingdom, a new kingdom at that time. And they were unifying all the Yadus who'd run away in fear of Kamsa. This is also significant. As we sometimes say in Jagannath Puri, God always supports organized religion. And so here we see that Krishna and Balaram, they're supporting the authorities. They're supporting the king. Because they understand we have some influence on all the members of the Yadu dynasty. And so we should encourage all of them. We should go to the assembly and show our subordination, our respect to Maharaj Ugrasena, the king. And we should encourage all the members of the Yadu dynasty to come here. I'm supporting Ugrasena, so you should also support him. But then Jiva Goswami says every day, after attending those very formal assemblies, which are like Congress or something, then Krishna would go back to that camp where the boys were, and he would play with his friends in different amazing ways. And what is a particular point? Why is it that Jiva Goswami says that it was Aishvarja Krida, a Chamatkar Krida, or very astonishing how they were playing together? What is significant about that? Because Krishna knew we're not going to have much more time. And let me spend this time now with my friends who I won't see for a very, very long time. So I'd like to speak a little something to you also from a rare book which we had translated called Acarya Samvad. And 2 days went by, it's described there. And Nanda Maharaj started getting restless. We have to return to Vrindavan. And he was thinking about Nandarani, Yashoda, and others who must be dying in separation from Krishna. And in the meantime, Balaram came to meet Nanda Maharaj. And Balaram told Nanda Maharaj, "Oh Bappa, Father, Vasudeva and Devaki, they want us to stay here for a few more days." It's natural for them because after his birth, Krishna was taken away from them. And now Krishna's 11 years old. It's been 11 years since Devaki and Vasudev saw Krishna. When Nanda Maharaj heard Balaram's words, he became very agitated and uncomfortable. The 45th chapter, the 10th canto, text 11, describes, Sinchatav ashudara bi sneha pasena chavrito nakinchit uchato rajan baspa kanto vimohita. It's described there that Krishna's parents, Vasudeva and Devaki, when they met with Krishna, Sinchanto is very sweet how it's described. Sinchanto means to sprinkle. Sprinkle what? The ashru, the tears, which were coming down Darabi like showers of sneha, of affection. And pasena, avrito. Pasena means a rope. They bound Krishna up with a rope of love, or they were bound up with a rope of love. And their voice, kanta vimohito, had become overwhelmed with affection. In the discussions that Balaram is referring to with Krishna and Devaki and Vasudev. Jiva Goswami, in his Laghu Vaishnav Toshani, he says that all of these things were not seen by Nanda Maharaj, because Krishna treated both Vasudev and Nanda as his father, but not in each other's presence. So sweet is the dealings of Krishna. When he's with Vasudev, Devaki, he's treating him like my mother and father and calling him Bapa, Mata, and giving him so much love. And Nanda Maharaj is not there, because if Nanda Maharaj was there, he might feel something. He might feel a little hurt. Oh, now Krishna, he's loving Devaki and Vasudev more than Yashoda and myself. And similarly, when Krishna would go to Nanda Maharaj, he would speak to him in a sweet way. So he didn't do this in the presence of each other. And Krishna, by this, again, we can learn from his very sweet behavior. The next verse in the Bhagavatam describes, Evam asvashapitaro bhagavan devaki sutta matamaham tu grasenam yaduna makaron ripam. It's described in this verse that comforting his mother and father, Vasudeva and Devaki, then Krishna, he installed Ugrasena as the king. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments again that this comforting Vasudeva and Devaki occurred out of sight of Nanda. And then Nanda Maharaj, he was thinking that, oh, my son, he's very tired from this fight, and so he's retired to these inner chambers where Vasudeva and others are affectionately feeding him in great bliss. And since Krishna's with them, I'll go to my own rooms without any fear for Krishna's safety. And then Nanda Maharaj went back to the camp that they had outside of Mathura, and therefore he didn't see the exchange between Krishna, Vasudeva, and Devaki, which are being described in these verses. This is also the nature of a devotee. When he sees that someone has a very loving exchange, he doesn't just stand there, you're going to notice me also, but he quietly goes away. Just like we hear in Gopal, in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, when Gopal Kumar went to Vaikuntha, he's a cowherd boy, you can't really blame him, he's a little simple, and he just wanted to hang out all day long with Lord Narayan, and he did. And then it got evening time, and Lakshmi Devi's there alone with Lord Narayan, and Gopal Kumar is also there, and he's smiling, he's just a cowherd boy, he's a gwala. And Lakshmi Devi's kind of like, looking at the watch, don't you have something else to do? No, we're fine here, I'm happy. I think maybe it's time you go do something else. So Gopal Kumar was a little, perhaps, inexperienced in dealing with the devotees. But Nanda Maharaj is a much greater devotee. And Nanda Maharaj sees it's not appropriate for me to be here. Now, there, Krishna wants to have an intimate connection with Vasudeva. Let him have that. And he goes away. I remember in a similar way with my Guru Maharaj, when I was his personal servant for a couple months in 1994, and we were traveling together. It was sacred. I respected as sacred the exchanges that our Guru Maharaj would have with the different devotees who were coming to him. And although Guru Maharaj almost always told me to stay in the room with him, and sometimes I would help to explain something that the devotee was wanting to say to Guru Maharaj, maybe it was difficult for them to say it, or sometimes they couldn't understand Guru Maharaj's accent, and I would kind of translate for Guru Maharaj. But for the most part, I was quiet. And even though sometimes I saw that the exchange they were having sometimes was a little shallow, the person was saying something a little stupid perhaps, but that's not my business. That's between the two of them. And my service to Guru Maharaj was to stay out of the way and just be there like a fly on the wall, and maybe not even in the room at all, according to his desire. So Jiva Goswami in Laghu Vaishnav Toshini, he says that about this verse, which is speaking about how Ugrasenam Yadunam Karoti Nripam, how he made Ugrasena the Nripa, the king. He says the word here uses tu. Tu means and. And what does it mean, the word and here? And Jiva Goswami gives a very beautiful explanation. He says that it indicates his main purpose in making Ugrasena king was because Krishna wanted to return to Vrindavan. Let me put him in charge, then I can go. Just like we often tell the devotees that if you really want to be serious about your bhajan, then you should always respect the managers and leaders. Because if you don't respect them, you may become a leader. When you start complaining about them, oh, these guys, they're bogus, then someone's going to say, oh, good. Well, what you're saying is correct. Your critique is so good. Then you should be in charge. And then what's going to happen to your bhajan? And we see throughout history that the reformers, the rebels, the persons who are making a revolution against the status quo, then they become the next status quo. And then there's another revolution down the road. And someone complains about them when they become the status quo. Hari Vamsa Purana describes that Ugrasena was lamenting from the death of Kamsa. We didn't read so much about that in a description from Hari Vamsa. I've been particular in what we're reading in our discussion. But Jiva Goswami says that lamentation was just customary. He said it wasn't even considered by Shukadev Goswami. Shukadev Goswami in the Bhagavatam doesn't even mention the lamentation of Ugrasena. And then he says, an interesting thing too, that other facts that are given in Hari Vamsa Purana, the Hari Vamsa Purana mentions that Vasudev was not imprisoned. Oh, how do we understand that? Sometimes devotees become very, very disturbed. How is it says one thing in this book and a different thing in this book? Jiva Goswami in Laghu Vaishnav Toshini says that these were narrations from different kalpas. In other words, Sanatana Goswami in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, he says that Krishna was performing his leelas again and again in every Divya Yuga, every time when he was coming. And those pastimes would be a little different. Sanatana Goswami says that sometimes Krishna was riding on the head of Kaliya and dancing on him. Sometimes he put a rope through his nose and rode him like a horse. Sometimes he took the gopis on the heads of Kaliya and did a Ras Leela. Sometimes, Sanatana Goswami says, Krishna rode Kaliya like a horse and went to Mathura, not with a krura, but on top of Kaliya. And so they're in different kalpas, things happen in a little different way. Jiva Goswami goes on to describe in Gopal Campu how Krishna had a conversation with the senior members of the Yadu dynasty. And in that assembly, Nanda Maharaj was not invited. Krishna and Balaram went there, they called for him, and Krishna spoke to them first, and Krishna told them, I have a request before all of you, you senior persons. Krishna is behaving in such a sweet way. He's not saying, I'm senior to you, I'm Bhagavan, I killed Kamsa, don't you know who I am? But he's treating him with respect. Such a sweet thing. So then everybody was there saying, no, what do you want? Tell us. And Krishna said, I want that you should all go home. And you should have Ugrasena as the king. You're all happy. Previously I told you that this kingdom is not attractive to me, but you should know, Vrindavan gives me great happiness. I'm missing Vrindavan. I'm missing the residents of Vrindavan. When the members of that assembly heard Krishna's words, and they were looking at Krishna's face, at that time, Vikadru, who was an elder member of the Yadu dynasty, he spoke with great agitation. And he told Krishna, Krishna, previously we had only one enemy, who was Kamsa. And because of the strength of Kamsa, we didn't even consider anyone else. Because all the other demoniac kings, like Sisupal and Jarasandha and others, they're like nothing compared to Kamsa. But then you killed Kamsa. And now this Jarasandha and all these other, they said millions of different kings, planning all kinds of millions of weapons, they've sprung up. The members of the Yadu dynasty, they depend on you for their survival. And they're taking shelter of you with affection. Please, you have to establish them. You have to take care of them. Moreover, we heard that Akashvani, at the time of the marriage of your father, Vasudev, and your mother, Devaki, that Akashvani, that the demigods, they stated, the 8th child will kill you. That's the witness. You're actually our child. You're not the son of Nanda Maharaj. You belong to us. The demigods agreed. You seem like you're confused. You're so attached to Nanda Maharaj. You're so attached to the people of Vrindavan. But you should understand you're actually our child. You're not Nanda Maharaj's child. Therefore, it's your duty to protect us. There's no more dangers for the cowherd people of Vrindavan now. Kamsa's not going to send any more demons there. So you should do the right thing and take care of us. When Krishna heard these words, Krishna, who promises, Yeyatam mam prapadyante tam sataiva bhajamyaham, I'll always reciprocate according to the mood of my devotee. He couldn't argue with those words. What can you say? Krishna was quiet. He didn't say anything. But he became very sad in his mind. And he quietly left that assembly. And along with Balaram, he went to privately speak to Vasudev and Devaki. Krishna is a diplomat. He understands, okay, this is not going to work. Vikadru and the senior members of the Yadu dynasty, they're not going to agree to let me go. So now he's going to another person. Just like sometimes the children, when their father tells them, no more ice cream for you. And they can't say anything. So then after father leaves the room, they go to the mother and they say, Mom, can we have some ice cream? And the mother says, yes, it's okay. You can have. So Krishna is doing something like that. And he went with Balaram to see Devaki and Vasudev. And Krishna told Vasudev, Yad Vraja lokam vilokam ayachava. Jiva Goswami says this in Gopal Campu, that, my dear father, we are going to go to Vrindavan. That Vrindavan, it has no light. And the people are not there, meaning Nanda Maharaj is not there, meaning Balaram is not there, I'm not there. When Devaki Vasudev heard Krishna's words, they were quiet. They were nervous because they remembered the statement that we read from Hari Vamsa Purana. At the time of Ugrasena's coronation, Krishna said very emphatically, Ahamsa eva go madhya. I stay among the cows. There ain't no cows in Mathura. Mathura is not the place for the cows. And so from that statement, Devaki and Vasudev started getting nervous. They could understand Krishna wants to go to Vrindavan. And if Krishna goes there, he's going to forget everything else. So Vasudeva and Devaki couldn't say anything. And finally, after a long time, Devaki said, you're going to reject us? You're our life heirs? We finally gotten you after such a long time, 11 years. 6 of my babies were killed. I lost my 7th child. Balaram was transferred, became known as Sankarshan because of that. And for 11 years, I didn't see you. And now I'm seeing you. You've been here just for a few days and you're going to leave us? They were looking at Krishna's face and it was nothing more that they could say. Krishna and Balaram then went to a private place to discuss. And Krishna told Balaram, hey Balai, we've been very blunt. We weren't diplomatic. We just told them very bluntly, we want to go to Vrindavan. But now they're afraid that we're not going to return, and they're speaking to us in this way. They're giving us instruction. It's not appropriate to disobey the order of the superior. And then Krishna began to speak about Shastra. He says, Balaram, you should know that in Treta Yuga, Bhagavan, God, came as Ramachandra, and he was very respectful to his parents. He was Maryada Purushottam. He was the best behaved child in the world. And being respectful to the order of his father, gave up his kingdom. He gave up everything. He was going to give up his newly married wife Sita, and he went to live in the forest. It was full of rakshasas. He's the example. So how can we disobey the order of our superiors, Devaki and Vasudev? Moreover, if we go, then it's true what they're saying in the assembly, that Jarasandha and other demons are going to attack. And moreover, what will happen though, if we go to Vrindavan, then Jarasandha will attack Vrindavan. And everything will become spoiled. They were both quiet for a moment. And then Krishna said, Tasmach Shri Brajesha Charana Samadhanam Eva Sampratam Iti. Tasmach, now Shri Brajesha Charana, we have to go to Braja Isha, the king of Braj. We have to go to see the Charana, the feet of Nanda Baba, and take shelter of him. Samadhanam Eva Sampraptam Iti. Twice Jiva Goswami describes, Krishna used the word sampraptam. Sampraptam has a number of meanings. It means what's proper, what's suitable. It means at this time. So this is the proper thing to do. What can we do? We don't know what to do. How can we refuse the instructions of Devaki and Vasudev? Now we have to take shelter. It's appropriate for us to take shelter of Nanda Maharaj's feet. So I'm going to stop here. In our next session, we'll speak something about what Krishna said to Nanda Maharaj and what Nanda Maharaj replied to Krishna. It's very, very heartbreaking. So I'd like to invite the devotees now. If anyone has any reflections, I'd like to know what you're walking away with from our reading and discussion this morning here in India. And I want to thank everybody very much for taking part. Natalia, Hari Krishna, and Vraja Banita, nice to see you. Leela Avatar Mataji, Hari Krishna, nice to see you. You're here in Mayapur. Maybe we'll see you at the Sunday Feast program today. PC Mahapatra, Hari Krishna, nice to be taking part today. So there's no reflections or comments from anybody here. If you have something, please type it in for us. Anapani, do you have anything you want to share? Here, take this.
Krishna, thank you so much. I was waiting till this moment when you will explain what happened between Nanda Maharaj and Krishna, but you postponed it for you just postponed it for the next class. It was interesting for me to hear about how Krishna, he doesn't show his affection in front of others. For example, Nanda Maharaj and Vasudev, he doesn't show it for both, like for one of them in front of another. It's just a proper behavior. It's also for a nice example that if there is somebody standing next to the person you want to invite, so it's not proper to speak in such a way. It's interesting. And also for me it was interesting that after the talk, Krishna and Balaram and Vasudeva and Devaki, they went to a private place and they started to discuss it, that they were so blind, and they said to Devaki and Vasudeva directly that we just want to go to Vrindavan. It's interesting that after that they were thinking that they have to be diplomatics, but I just wondered why Krishna he did it. Because he could say something in diplomatic way, but he first said just directly that he wants to go to Vrindavan. So just wanted to.
He shouldn't come this time.
It just. So the question is why Krishna he directly, bluntly told to Vasudeva and Devaki that he wants to go to Vrindavan. That's all.
Why he directly told them?
Yeah, he wasn't diplomatic.
He was not diplomatic.
Yeah.
Well, Krishna saw that this diplomacy is not going to work. He tried the diplomacy. And the senior members of the Yadu dynasty, two of whom were Vasudev and Devaki, the members of the Yadu dynasty weren't accepting it. And no, how can you go? You have to stay, otherwise we're going to die. Jarasandha and Shishupal and all these demoniac kings are going to come and attack. So you have to stay behind to protect us. And moreover, Krishna makes us promise, as we said, Yayatam mam prapadyante tam sataiva bhajamyam. He always reciprocates in a like-minded way with the devotee how they approach him. And they were approaching him with so much love, and Krishna didn't know what to say. He couldn't refuse him. He was, as we might say in America, between a rock and a hard spot. It means you can't go either way. What can you do? And so then Krishna saw, then I just have to be straightforward and just have to really reveal my heart. But even that didn't work with Vasudeva and Devaki because they're pretty. Their love for Krishna is so strong. They couldn't tolerate thinking of him go to Vrindavan. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Brajabanita's commented, thank you. I like the funny story about how a devotee must be sensible in a situation of others. Yes, just like if you meet with a friend and another friend is with you, and maybe you're meeting this other friend for the first time in a long time, it's not appropriate in front of the other friend to tell him, you're my best friend. You're this, you're that. Then the other friend may feel a little hurt in the heart. Natalia has commented, thank you for the revelations about Krishna's examples of friendship and other close relations. So we should meditate on these things. And we should learn from these relationships. It's very, very important. And how sweet they are, how intimate, how deep they are. So we'll be back again in our next session on Wednesday. And in that session, we're going to speak about what Krishna said to Nanda Maharaj and how he convinced Nanda Maharaj and how it was that Krishna was able to convince Nanda Maharaj. As Sanatana Goswami says, we're not so impressed that he created the universe. We're not so impressed that he destroyed the universe, but we're very impressed that Krishna had the strength to send Nanda Maharaj back to Vrindavan. That's the real question. So we'll stop there. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveda Bhakta Binda